Welcome to Secretly Sporty. I'm your host, Sebastian Langdell, and I'm joined here with my co-creator, Austin Reckless. Hey, Austin.
Hey, Sebastian. How's it going?
I might have signed up for a race recently, and I've been trying to think of ways to kind of up my mileage gradually. So I've been telling myself, I'm going to take my longest run each week and then add a quarter mile or a half mile per week, just kind of tiptoe up.
So where are you at? What's your long run right now?
Well, last week I was at 6.5 miles. So do you want to guess what I did this week?
6 3/4 miles.
I did 8 miles.
That's not a quarter or a half mile, Sebastian.
I know. It's a trick question. What happened is you had sent me this episode and I was listening to it while I was running and I loved it. And I just got hooked while running, had to do a few extra laps so I could get through the lightning round and just listen to the whole thing.
This is like our version of This American Life's driveway moments, right? The stories where you just sit in the driveway to listen to the end.
Yeah, I think I had a driveway moment, but I was running past my driveway.
Because that's how we do.
How about you? Do you have some stuff on the horizon? What have you been working on?
Well, I am prepping for a tennis tournament this weekend. So I've just been trying to get as much time on the tennis courts as possible. I've never done a tournament before. I've only had one-off matches. So this is a new experience for me. Our guest today is a boxer, and I don't know, I feel like this is the Wimp's equivalent of going into a boxing match. I'm just a lot farther away and I'm not going to get punched in the face.
Tennis and boxing are exactly the same.
Totally the same.
I mean, this is a great episode.
It's true.
Laura Vandenberg, prolific writer of a number of novels and collections of short stories. The most recent one is State of Paradise, and she has a new novel coming out next year, 2027.
Yeah, and she's drawing on some of her boxing experience, so that's really exciting to see, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I thought that the ways that she tied boxing and writing together were really surprising and oftentimes sort of flipped maybe our expectation or the question on its head.
For sure. One of my favorite things that she says in this episode is talking about seeing these people in the boxing gym for the first time and having this kind of simultaneous thought of, I wish I could do that, but then also I know I'll never be able to do that. And her identifying that kind of dissonance as something that writers are kind of drawn to naturally and something that writers are trained to kind of focus in on and identify and follow through.
I thought that was really interesting. And then how the lessons she's learned have carried over into her real life and her writing life was all really fascinating.
For sure. Should we get into it?
Let's get into it.
All right. Here is Laura Vandenberg. Welcome, Laura. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
We like to start by asking about your most recent workout.
So I had a very late night, which is not, I don't have that many late nights, but Wednesday I had a very late night. And so on Thursday, I live in Hudson, New York, so I'm in the Hudson Valley, but I took the train back up from the city and didn't get back in time to make it to boxing training, but I just took a kettlebell strength class at a local spot that's near me, and it was chill and good.
So what does a normal week look like for you in terms of working out, in terms of boxing and all the other training that you do around boxing?
Yeah, so a normal week for me, if I have a fight on the horizon, and the way it works too in the amateurs, it might be helpful to break this down a little bit because it's really different than professional boxing. Sometimes, if you're matched for a fight weeks or months ahead, and sometimes you don't. So we really have to kind of stay ready year round, even if we don't have an immediate fight on the horizon. So a typical week for me would be normally I am in a boxing gym probably 5 to 6 days a week, and then also do a couple of strength workouts a week and runs. We do a lot of our conditioning is track workouts, a lot of sprinting and interval runs. And I also try and do some recovery stuff a couple days a week, like mobility in the morning or hot yoga, things to just sort of loosen up everything.
You're doing a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I train In some capacity, pretty much like 6 to 7 days a week.
How does that fit in with your teaching schedule and with your writing schedule?
During the school semester, I usually get up early to do my runs in. Sometimes, depending on where I am location wise, I do my strength training in the morning also. And then the boxing is usually in the evening. I do feel like it's a little bit of a Jenga tower where it's like there are all of these, pieces that I'm trying to kind of fit together. I think the thing that I really have to let go of is a certain degree of like social life, because the boxing work is nearly always in the evenings. And that means they're just weeks and months where I'm like, I can't go to that party. I would love to have dinner with you, but I can't.
I want to back up a little bit and ask you when boxing started for you and whether exercise played a large role in your life before that.
I was not sporty. I didn't do sports in high school. I was very much like the last kid to be picked for the dodgeball team. I walked my dog, and that was all I did for exercise. So boxing came into my life because I was having a lot of personal problems. I had moved to Cambridge recently to start a job at Harvard where I still teach. My dad was really sick. There was a lot of difficult things going on in my family. I was having a kind of resurgence of like an anxiety disorder that I really wrestled with when I was younger. I was having panic attacks again and insomnia, and I couldn't sleep. I decided to go back into therapy, and one observation that the therapist I was seeing made was like, you're a writer. My very wonderful husband is also a writer. I teach creative writing, and all my friends are writers, and it's like your world seems a little bit like small in a way, or a little bit, what's your outlet? She was like, what do you do for fun? And I was like, I don't know. And so she's like, I think a good thing for you to do would be to like go out into the world and figure out what that is. And so, I started with things that seemed sort of obvious to me. Like I tried yoga, I tried Pilates, I tried meditation, and I had a hard time sticking with those things. I decided to try a boxing class, and it was fitness boxing. It was just listening to loud music and hitting a heavy bag. And I was terrible, and it was exhausting, and I remember like I couldn't keep up with any of the combinations, but I did feel better. And so I kept coming back. And then that gym, which was mostly a fitness boxing gym, but they did have a coach that ran a beginner sparring group. And I remember seeing people work in the ring, like when I was coming and going from class, and having two thoughts at the same time. One was, I wish I could be in there with them. And the other was, I could never be in there with them. And I think writers, like we really respond, like when we feel that friction or we feel that internal tension, like that's so often a sign that like, oh, there's something here, right? I just felt that inner tension enough that eventually, I approached the coach and was like, hey, like, how do I kind of join this group, or like, how do I jump in there? People think the kind of landing point for this story is like, I got in the ring and I was like a prodigy, or I got in the ring and I was like a natural born killer. That wasn't the case at all. I got in, the first time I did any sort of like, even this was very controlled. So like light contact drilling or sparring defense drills, like I got really overwhelmed. I froze. I shelled up. I did all the things that you're not supposed to do. I had all the like wrong instincts actually. But I think partly because I had been in therapy for PTSD, I think I realized like I'm being asked to work through something in this space that I really need to handle. And it's giving me a way to do that work in a way that's totally different from therapy.
How would you describe what it was that you were being asked to handle in that space at that time?
I think that, it's like the three common PTSD responses are fight, flight, and freeze. And I think I had a very strong like freeze response where I wouldn't like literally run away or run out of the ring, but I would just freeze up. And so I think boxing has taught me to fight through the freeze response, to choose a different path through that intensity. It taught me to like very literally fight back. But I think the biggest thing is boxing taught me how to calm myself down. And that's like, I think a big misconception about the sport is that in order to fight or to want to fight, you need to be really like angry and like full of rage and intensity. Some people are. But really, like, I think the art of the sport is that is to stay calm under immense pressure. And a lot of that has to do with being able to regulate your nervous system, being able to send signals to your nervous system that like you're safe and like you've got you know? Those are the things that boxing really taught me.
So that's something that you draw on when you're in other moments of anxiety, or is
Oh,
it really?
definitely. I don't get as nearly as anxious and flustered as I used to. After I'd been boxing for maybe a year, I stopped having panic attacks. And I think once I eventually, this took several years, so it was a long journey. But when I eventually got to the point where I was training for my first fight, I also took a hard, cold-eyed look at a lot of other like lifestyle choices that were not helping my mental health. So for example, I started, making changes to like my sleeping habits to make sure I was getting proper rest and recovery. I actually came to meditation and now like do have a meditation practice that I do every morning, but I came to it to manage my nerves when I was getting ready for my first bout. I radically reduced the amount that I was drinking. I don't think I realized in the moment like I was drinking really excessively and how much that was contributing to the anxiety and the insomnia and the panic I was feeling. So boxing helped me kind of like clean my side of the street.
Is there a certain kind of supplements that you kind of swear by?
I just magnesium and like a multivitamin is really all I do. If I'm sparring, particularly if I'm like have like a lot of sparring coming up or if I'm fighting soon, I do beef up the supplements for brain health, like some antioxidants, fish oil, basic things like that, just to make sure I'm taking as good a care of my brain as I possibly can. But otherwise, no, I'm like, my pre-workout is like salt on a banana and a big glass of water.
I've never heard of salts on a banana before, but I get it. And that sounds pretty good.
I mean, it's everything you need.
Yeah. You don't want the protein right before a workout.
No, you need carbs. You need carbs like a track runner would need carbs. It's a lot of the work that we do. Again, this is a big difference between amateur and professional boxing because in the amateurs, all fights are 3 rounds. A pro fighter might fight an 8-round fight or a 6-round fight or a 10-round fight, depending on what the level of the fight is. And in my division, I do 2-minute rounds. So it's basically like being able to kind of sprint for 2 minutes, recover in a minute, and then repeat that 2 more times. I always tell that to people who are trying to like cut weight for their weight class, where it was like, do not cut out your carbs. You're going to start to feel really bad.
When you started boxing, how do you think your approach to writing changed? Did it change? Did your style change?
I would say it's had an influence on my writing in 2 ways. First is just subject matter. I have a Substack where I write about boxing, which is not, something that was on my personal bingo card, but a thing that I'm really glad to be doing. My next novel, which will be out in 2027, is a literary crime novel called Ring of Night, but it's set in the world of a small town amateur boxing gym.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so certainly I'm writing about the sport and the world in a way that I wouldn't never have if I hadn't actually been doing it. I don't think it had an impact like on aesthetics or process. I was a writer for a long time before I started boxing, right? So that was a part of myself that I knew well and was, like a pretty stable part of my identity. In fact, I would say I think being a writer helps me become a fighter because, there's always a moment in any long form project that I've ever worked on. I always hit a moment where I'm like, I can't. Like, I actually can't. It's too hard. It's too big. No one will want to read this. I'm trying to pull off something that I cannot possibly pull off. And I think that that's true, in the hardest conditioning workouts that I've ever done, the hardest like sparring I've ever done. There are those moments where you hear that inner voice where you're like, I can't. It's too hard. I'm too overwhelmed. I'm too tired. Like, I can't. The first time I heard that voice, in the ring, it was sort of familiar to me because I was like, oh, I've heard that voice at my desk, right? And I sort of know what to do with it. And then that other voice has to switch on where it's like, you can and you will. Learning to do that in both spaces has just, I think it's like given me a sort of inner, I don't even, confidence feels a little superficial for what I'm trying to articulate, but I think it's given me a kind of like inner solidity, sort of, where I just know that there is this solidness in me that I really trust.
I was thinking about the belly button in State of Paradise that transforms, because I was thinking about, yeah, how the bodily kind of shows up in that novel, and this remarkable kind of magical realist detail that we get of the belly button transforming.
Yeah, so I have a crazy story about how that detail came about, and actually is connected to boxing. So for my first fight, my coach kind of left it up to me to pick my weight class, and I picked a weight class that I should not have picked. It was too low. But I lost so much weight that my belly button popped out. So it became like an outie instead of an innie. And then once I fought and I like put some weight back on after the fight, it like went back to its usual shape. But
Yeah.
it was a very strange experience because, yeah, your belly button just kind of like is like, there are other parts of your body that might sort of shift and change as you move through time. But like in my experience, at least, my belly button has always been sort of consistent. So it was a really weird experience to suddenly have it look totally different. I knew I wanted the narrator in State of Paradise to have some sort of transformative physical change. And I was thinking about what that might look like. And then I remembered my own experience with my belly button popping out and transforming in that way. And I was like, what if that happened to her, but it was actually the opposite, where it was sinking kind of deeper and deeper.
It begins to feel like a portal.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned, you have this amazing quote on your Substack that progress can feel invisible at times, like a river that's flowing underground, and you don't even realize the body of water is gathering momentum until it breaks through the surface. And then you note that you think that's true of writing too. So in writing, like, can you think of a moment when you were writing and you had that realization that, yeah, these kind of underground streams are surfacing?
Yeah, I remember when I was working on my first novel and I was at a residency down in the Keys in Florida, and I'd just been having like a really hard time with this book, and I'd thrown out a big chunk of it, but I was having a really hard time figuring out what the new material would be. And I just hit this sort of wall that felt immovable, and I was like, I actually don't think I can finish this book. I think I'm gonna have to throw the whole thing away. I drafted a letter, an email to my agent and my editor being like, I'm so sorry. I actually don't think I can write this book. And just let me know, like, what, I'm not sure what my options are, but like, let me know where we go from here. But I decided to sleep on it and to not send it right away. And I woke up the next morning and I went for a walk and I went swimming because I was like, well, I'm not writing this book anymore. So now I can do whatever I want. And it was on the walk back from swimming in the ocean that I had just this like total epiphanic breakthrough. And I think sometimes the thing that's so hard is that when we imagine progress, we just imagine this, we can imagine this kind of smooth, like upward trajectory, right? And even if the progress is slow, we'll be feeling like, okay, incrementally, it's getting a little better, it's getting a little better, it's getting a little better. And I think one thing that writing has taught me is that sometimes progress feels awful, in the sense that, you're in this space of struggle, you're in this space of wrestling, and there's no end in sight. But by, allowing yourself to stay engaged in this, kind of artistic wrestling, like you are progressing, you are moving towards something, even if it feels like you're just going in circles.
I'm kind of curious. So as you're training, as you're boxing, and especially if you're doing as much training as you are, your body naturally kind of changes. How do you greet those changes?
It's interesting. It's given me like a really different perspective on aging. I don't know if this has been your experience with lifting, but like I feel so much better than I did in my, say, mid 30s. I think part of that is, lifestyle changes like we were talking about earlier. But also, like, I'm able to do stuff now that I was never able to do. Like, I can do unassisted pull-ups. I can deadlift nearly twice my body weight. I can do push-ups. I have physical capacities that I did not have for much of my life. And so I feel like a lot of appreciation for that. I think I treat my physical self with a lot more like kindness and gentleness in some ways.
Right.
I think, for artists and academics and like folks who just, spend a lot of time like in their head and in their imagination, I think so much of my life I was like my body was just, I don't know, it was like just like I lived in the imaginative realm, and I just sort of forgot that I was also tethered to this physical self who needed like water and sleep and all of these things, and just sort of treated my body like a machine that would never stop running. The shift for me has been that like feeling a lot more connected to my physical self and feeling like a deeper sense of sort of affection and appreciation and kindness, and just feeling like I know my body a lot better than I used to.
I can definitely relate. I similarly, like, I never really did pull-ups before I started weightlifting, and it's one of those things that I am still amazed by in a way, because it was a very incremental build-up to even being able to do one, and then being able to do like several in a row. I'm kind of grateful for the body being something that can surprise you with its strength.
I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. I love that idea of being able to be surprised like by your physical self and by your physical capacities, even at when you're in the sort of like, moving into the zone of middle age. And I think, there were all these things I discovered. I'm like really good at jumping. I love, our coach has us do these like complicated, like 6 or 7 box jumps. And like I love jumping, I love bounding. I have like athleticism in ways that I was like, I had no idea that I had the capacity to, like jump this high or do these kinds of complicated sequences.
Boxing is a sport for which pain is central. Was that surprising to you that you were okay with that aspect of it, or is that something you've kind of known that you can handle?
Yeah, this is probably something that like interests me. One of the things that interests me the most about combat sports, and I'm still trying to figure out like how to think about it. But that was one thing that surprised me, I think, when I got deeper into the sport and started sparring and started working toward boxing at a competitive level, is that my pain threshold was actually like quite high, and it was a lot higher than I realized. But I think looking back, I can definitely see self-destructive impulses and even self-destructive to the point of even having like a capacity for self-harm. And I wonder, I do think sometimes, and I don't think this is true of combat sports, I think this can be true of a lot of sports if you're trying to do it at a high level or at a competitive level, there is that, sometimes it can be hard to find the line between like, is this just simply doing the training that's required of you, or are you kind of crossing the line into like self-harm, right?
Yeah.
Like where, like how do you find that line? And I think in a lot of ways this is where the coach is really important, and I trust my coach so much, and I actually trust him to find that line for me, to be like, keep going, or that's it for today, or you have more, or like you did all that you could. I am the person who would like train injured, run injured, even when there was, all common sense would be telling me to like not do that. So I actually really need that outside sort of voice that I trust that sort of helps me find that line.
I'm so glad you found that right person too, because as you're saying, that is so key.
Totally. Because I, drive probably like almost an hour to get to my gym, and when people are like, oh, like surely there must be a place to box closer, and it's like there probably is, but like I was looking for a person that I would trust enough to help me make those determinations.
Right. Can you think of an especially euphoric moment in boxing?
There is nothing like being on the other side of a fight. It is truly without irony, it like you are high on life. After I fight for the first like 48, maybe 72 hours, I feel like I could run for president. I mean, I'm like, I don't need to sleep. I'm getting all this work done. It's like having just like a scotch of like just the right amount of mania. So with my first fight, I felt euphoria on the other side, even though I lost, and I lost a unanimous decision. I got my butt kicked in my first fight, but I still felt euphoria because I was like, I did it. I'm on the other side. I'm alive. And I would do it again. And then my second fight, I won. And that was just, I fight on like the local club circuit. But yes, in that moment, I was like, I felt like a world champion.
Right.
It's a fantastic feeling to get your hand raised. And there's the momentary euphoria and the celebratoriness. And then there's also something deeper, I think, that stays with you. And it's just that sort of, that solidity that I was talking about earlier, that sturdying of self. And I feel that like a little bit more with each fight that I do.
I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing to concentrate on, is that even in loss, you can find euphoria and you can feel that sense of accomplishment. And it was your first fight.
Yes, yeah.
We like to end on a lightning round, so we have a lightning round for you.
Let's do it.
Cardio or strength training?
Cardio.
Protein shake or protein bar?
Bar.
Cottage cheese or Greek yogurt?
Cottage cheese, I think. Yeah.
Sauna or cold plunge?
Ooh, sauna.
Swim in the ocean or swim in a pool?
Ocean. All the way.
Nice. Workout first or create first?
Create first.
Peanut butter on a banana or a date?
Oh my God, a date. Peanut butter and dates, that's like my favorite snack.
I am
yeah,
very happy to hear you say that. And you can put a little more salt on top too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And would you rather meet your artistic hero or your athletic hero?
Ooh, that's so hard.
Yeah.
You know, maybe my athletic hero, because writers are like we could say some of us are our best and most interesting selves on the page, and then to encounter them in person can be kind of ultimately anticlimactic. I don't know if the same is true for athletes, but I think, yeah, I'll go with athletic. I'll go with athletic hero.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking this time. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
It was great to talk. Thank you for the conversation.
Join us next time as we talk with podcast host, politician, and author Jason Kander about how joining a baseball team changed his relationship to fitness, how untreated PTSD affected his physical health, and the writing advice that President Obama gave him. See you then.
You sit in the yard while I combed your hair. Your bags and guitar weighed out on the stairs.
Secretly Sporty was created and is produced by Sebastian Langdell and Austin Radcliffe. It's hosted by me, Sebastian Langdell, edited by Austin Radcliffe and Andy Radinger. Our music is composed by Catherine Joy. Cover art by Ben Wiseman, represented by Illustration Division Inc. This outro song you're listening to right now is Absence and Presence by Divorcee. Special thanks to Yoni Wolf, Anna Stewart, Julia Marrera, Halima Marcus, and Liam Billingham. Please note that we are not medical professionals nor personal trainers. Not all exercises are suitable for everyone. Always consult a doctor before starting any new exercise routine or nutritional program. The views expressed in this show are those of the show's creators or the guests, and not those of any other entity or institution.
Try.